"If only you were my husband, human." The alien lady's words shocked everyone in the hall. The space station hung like a bright jewel in the middle of the endless black. Ships of every size and shape floated around it, docking slowly or gliding past like silent birds. Inside, the halls were busy with aliens from dozens of worlds. Some were tall and thin with shining eyes. Others had thick, scaly skin or multiple arms that moved in careful precision. The air smelled faintly of metal and a sweet alien spice that no human could name. It was here, in this busy hall, that the most important meeting of the year was about to take place. Daniel Morris walked quietly along the long corridor. He adjusted the simple gray uniform he wore, the standard for the human delegation. Unlike the others, he carried no weapons and wore no flashy ornaments. Humans were considered weak and slow by many alien species, and Daniel had learned long ago that standing quietly was safer than showing pride. Still, there was a small confidence in his step, something that did not come from armor or training, but from years of careful observation and careful thinking. The hall opened into a massive chamber. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadows. Thousands of beings filled the room. Some were seated at long tables, others stood along walls, and some floated slightly above the ground using devices Daniel had never seen before. The central platform was shaped like a triangle, its sharp angles lined with lights that pulsed gently in rhythm with the station's energy. This was where the most powerful aliens would speak. Daniel found his assigned seat with the help of a young assistant named Lisa Brown. She was nervous like most humans in this place. Lisa whispered to Daniel, "Are you sure we belong here? Everyone looks so different." Daniel gave a small smile. "We belong here because we are human. That is enough." Lisa looked uncertain, but she sat down anyway. Around them, aliens glanced at the human delegation with curiosity. Some were polite and smiled, though their smiles were strange, stretching too far or too tight. Others ignored them entirely, focusing on glowing devices in front of them. Daniel felt the weight of their gazes, but he refused to let them disturb him. At the far end of the hall, a figure entered that made the room seem to pause. Lady Sarava, the noblewoman of the Kralian system, moved with calm authority. Her skin shimmered like silver liquid, and her eyes were bright purple, glowing faintly in the dim light. Even among her own people, she was feared and respected. As she walked, the hall seemed to quiet and heads turned instinctively. Aliens whispered her name in soft tones, as if speaking it too loudly might summon a storm. The station slowly returned to normal after the pirate attack. Repairs were underway in every corridor. Fires had been put out, walls patched, and injured beings cared for. Yet the memory of the chaos lingered in the minds of everyone who had lived through it. Among them, Daniel Morris and Lady Sarava were no longer merely participants in the station's daily life. They had become symbols. Humans, once underestimated, were now noticed. Not for their size, or their weapons, or their numbers, but for their courage, patience, and honesty. Daniel had shown that a single human, calm and steady, could inspire trust, save lives, and alter the perception of an entire species. Lady Sarava moved through the station quietly, observing the results of their efforts. Her eyes often sought Daniel, though she did not approach him openly. She had seen the truth of his character under fire, and it had left a lasting impression. Others noticed too. Aliens who had once ignored the human delegation now nodded respectfully when Daniel passed. He spoke when necessary, and his words carried weight. One morning, the station council convened for a formal session to discuss the aftermath of the attack. Daniel and the human delegation attended, quietly taking their seats. Lady Sarava was present, as always, though she remained distant from the main podium. Her presence was enough to command attention. The first speaker, a Kralian official, addressed the council. "The station has survived due to the quick action of our security forces and the coordination of civilians. We must acknowledge those who acted beyond expectation. His gaze swept across the room and then lingered on Daniel. Among them, one human officer showed remarkable courage, foresight, and calm under pressure. His actions saved countless lives. Daniel felt a flush of surprise. Humans were rarely singled out in such a way. He bowed his head slightly, humbly. "I only did what was right," he said simply. "I acted for the safety of all, nothing more." Lady Sarava's eyes met his across the chamber. She gave a subtle nod. That gesture, small but deliberate, carried meaning. Among her people, it was a sign of deep trust and approval. Daniel understood, though he did not let it change him. Humility, he knew, was part of the strength that had carried him through the crisis. After the council, the delegates mingled. Aliens approached Daniel cautiously. Some spoke words of thanks, others asked questions about human procedures and strategies. A few older, respected officials leaned closer to Lady Sarava, asking quietly about him. "You have changed perceptions," one whispered. "Humans are not weak, not insignificant." "This officer, he is remarkable." Lady Sarava's eyes glimmered with quiet pride. "I have known this since the hall meeting," she said softly. "He acts without pride or fear. That is why I spoke as I did. That is why the galaxy must notice him." Daniel continued to move through the station, helping where he could, speaking calmly to those in need, and assisting in repairs. His presence became a stabilizing force. Others began to rely on him, not because he demanded authority, but because he demonstrated the power of quiet action and courage. Late in the day, Daniel found himself on the observation deck once more. Lady Sarava appeared silently beside him. The stars outside shone with endless light, and the quiet of space was peaceful. "You have done more than I could have imagined," she said softly. "You have changed not only how humans are seen, but also how many beings see courage and honor." Daniel shook his head lightly. "I did only what was necessary. Courage is not something earned through words or recognition. It is something chosen in action." Her gaze met his, steady and unwavering. "And yet, actions speak louder than words. Your actions have spoken, human. And they have reached far beyond what you may realize." Daniel felt a warmth he had not expected. "I am grateful that my efforts have been helpful," he said simply. "That is all a human can hope for." Lady Sarava studied him for a long moment. "There is more than that. You have inspired trust. You have shown that humans can be partners, allies, and friends in ways others cannot. That is a gift." Daniel did not respond immediately. He thought of the hall meeting, the words she had spoken, and the events of the pirate attack. Everything had come together to show him a truth he had not fully understood before. Bravery and honesty could create bonds across worlds, across species, and even across the most distant reaches of space. "I do not know if I deserve your words," he said at last. "I only know that I will continue to act as I have. That is all I can promise." Lady Sarava smiled faintly, a rare softness in her expression. "That is enough. That is more than enough. Perhaps one day the galaxy will understand fully what humans are capable of. Perhaps one day they will understand what I saw in you the first time in the hall." Daniel felt a quiet pride, not for himself, but for the potential of humanity. For the first time, he realized that one human could indeed make a difference. One honest, calm, courageous being could change perceptions, earn respect, and inspire trust. Over the next few days, the station slowly returned to routine. Humans were no longer merely observers. They were partners, advisors, and valued members of the community. Daniel continued his work, but he noticed subtle changes everywhere. Aliens sought his advice. Civilians smiled at his calm presence. And Lady Sarava, while remaining formal in public, often sought his counsel in private matters. One evening, the two of them walked through the station's gardens, a rare quiet area with artificial plants and flowing water. It was one of the few places untouched by politics and power struggles. "You are changing the galaxy, human," Lady Sarava said quietly. Perhaps not by force, but by presence, by courage, by honesty, and that is stronger than any army, any weapon, any treaty. Daniel looked at her, his expression steady. I am only one human, but if my actions inspire others, then perhaps we can make the galaxy a safer place. That is all I hope for. Her eyes softened, reflecting the stars above. It is enough. It is more than enough. They walked together in silence, a quiet understanding growing between them. Words were not needed. Actions, trust, and shared experience spoke more loudly than any sentence could. Later, in the council chamber, Lady Sarava spoke openly about the humans' efforts during the pirate attack. These humans, she said, her voice clear and commanding, have shown courage, patience, and wisdom. Their actions have saved lives and restored trust. It is time that we recognize them as equals, not as curiosities or weak observers. The room was quiet for a moment, then applause erupted from delegates and civilians alike. Daniel, standing with his fellow humans, felt a sense of fulfillment. He had not sought recognition, but it was given anyway. The galaxy had begun to change its view of humanity, and he had been a catalyst. After the council, Lady Sarava approached him privately. "You have my respect," she said softly. "And more than that, you have shown that humans are not to be underestimated. I will remember this always, and perhaps one day we will see how much further your courage and honesty can reach." Daniel bowed slightly. "I am grateful, Lady Sarava. I will continue to act as I must. That is all I can promise." The station hummed with life around them, but for a moment the two of them stood quietly, looking at the stars. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but also full of opportunity. And they knew that together, or even in shared trust, humans and aliens could face whatever came next. For Daniel, the future was uncertain. He did not know what challenges awaited, but he knew that courage, honesty, and simple action had already changed the course of events. One human could make a difference, and in doing so could earn respect, trust, and friendship across the stars. Lady Sarava, the alien noblewoman who had spoken words that shocked a hall, now understood that her instincts had been right. Daniel Morris, the quiet human who had acted without pride or fear, had proven that strength was not measured by size, power, or status. Strength was measured by courage, honesty, and the willingness to act rightly when it mattered most. And the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. Daniel noticed her immediately. Unlike others who looked down on humans, Lady Sarava did not seem to see him at all. She moved with purpose, her attention on the platform, scanning the other representatives. But for a moment her eyes flicked toward him. He felt it, though he could not explain why. There was a strange recognition there, something that felt like respect or curiosity. The meeting began slowly. Alien lords spoke in booming voices, calling out trade agreements, sharing intelligence reports, and arguing about the borders of space territories. Their words were fast and sharp, filled with terms Daniel did not understand. Yet he listened carefully. Humans had learned to survive in the galaxy not by strength alone, but by understanding others. He took careful notes, writing down what mattered and ignoring the words meant only to show power. Some aliens grew impatient. They looked at humans like children who had wandered into a game they could never play. One of them, a tall, green-skinned creature with 3 eyes named Zarath, leaned forward and sneered. "Why are humans even here?" he asked, his voice harsh. "You cannot match our speed, our intelligence, or our strength. Are you only here to be a joke?" Daniel looked at Zarath calmly. He could have ignored him, but something in the tone of the alien made him speak. "We may not be the fastest or the strongest," he said, his voice low but firm. "But we are human. We observe, we learn, and we care for life. That has value, even in ways you may not understand." The hall grew quiet. Some aliens laughed, mocking him, but others looked thoughtful. Lady Sarava's eyes were fixed on Daniel. She leaned slightly forward, her hand resting on the arm of her seat. Her expression was unreadable, but her attention was clear. For the next several hours, the debate continued. Daniel stayed focused, taking careful notes, asking questions when appropriate, and speaking only when he felt it was necessary. His calmness seemed to irritate some aliens and intrigue others. By the time the first light of the station's artificial day brightened the chamber, many had begun to notice that the human delegation, small and quiet as it was, had a certain steady strength. During a break, Daniel walked along the hall to stretch his legs. Lady Sarava was nearby, speaking quietly to her own aides. Something made him look at her, and their eyes met again. She did not look away this time. She tilted her head slightly, almost as if studying him. Daniel felt a strange warmth at the gesture. Among all the chaos, all the pride and power of the meeting, someone was seeing him clearly. Lisa hurried to his side. "I don't understand," she said softly. She keeps looking at you." "Why?" Daniel shrugged, though he felt the tension in the air. "I do not know. But I will not pretend to understand everything here. Some things we can only notice." The second part of the meeting began with a sudden challenge. An alien lord from a warlike system named Verk stood up, his scales glittering in the lights. He made a loud accusation against Lady Sarava, claiming her people had broken an ancient treaty. The hall became tense. Aliens argued loudly, some threatening each other. Daniel noticed that Lady Sarava did not panic. She stood, her voice calm but firm. Her words were measured and clear, defending her people without raising anger unnecessarily. Daniel realized that she commanded respect, not by fear alone, but by presence and clarity. Something inside him stirred. He wanted to help, even if humans were not meant to fight alien politics in this place. When the debate became personal, with Verk mocking her and her family, Daniel could not stay silent. He stood and addressed the hall. His voice was quiet but carried across the chamber. "You speak as if power alone gives respect," he said. "But courage, honesty, and the care for life are stronger than any treaty, any weapon, or any threat. Lady Sarava has shown these qualities. It is not right to insult her or her people." The hall went still. No one moved. The words were simple, but they cut through the noise of arrogance and pride. Lady Sarava's eyes widened slightly. She looked directly at Daniel, and in that moment the air seemed to change. Aliens who had mocked humans looked unsure. Even Verk faltered, his scales losing some of their shine. Lady Sarava took a deep breath. Then, almost without thinking, she spoke. Her voice rang out, clear and certain, carrying through the hall. "If only you were my husband, human." Every head turned toward them. Aliens whispered, eyes wide. Some looked angry, some confused, some amused. Daniel froze for a moment, shocked that she had said such a thing. Among humans, such words would seem strange, even impossible in a formal setting. But the hall remained silent, waiting for what would happen next. Daniel's face burned, but he did not speak. He only bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect, unsure if words could capture what he felt. Lady Sarava's gaze lingered on him, not with pride but with something else. Something deep and genuine that no one in the room could misunderstand. The first part of the meeting ended, and humans were escorted back to their chambers. Whispers followed them everywhere. Lisa looked at Daniel wide-eyed. You did it, you wow." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I only spoke what was right, that is all." But even as he said it, he knew something had changed. The quiet human who had entered the hall as a minor observer had captured the attention of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. The implications were unclear. He did not know what would come next, but for the first time, he felt a spark of possibility. Outside the chamber, the stars of 1,000 worlds gleamed through the great windows of the station. Daniel stood there, looking at them, feeling small but not powerless. Somewhere beyond, the universe was vast and dangerous, but in that moment, one human voice had made a difference. One human courage had pierced centuries of arrogance and pride. And Lady Sarava, the alien noblewoman, had spoken words that would be remembered long after the meeting ended. Daniel did not yet know what those words truly meant. But deep inside, he felt that this was only the beginning. The hall remained frozen long after Lady Sarava's words echoed through it. "If only you were my husband, human." The phrase hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite a fire. Every being in the room felt it, though none could understand it fully. Some of the aliens whispered hurriedly to each other, their voices rising and falling in confused tones. Others simply stared, their many eyes fixed on Daniel. Humans were already a curiosity, but now one human had captured the attention of one of the most powerful alien leaders in the galaxy. Daniel sat frozen in his chair, unsure what to do next. His mind raced, but he tried to calm himself. He had spoken only the truth. He had defended her as he believed any human should, and yet he had not expected her to respond in such a way. He glanced at Lisa Brown, who was sitting beside him. Her face was pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. "Did she really say that?" Lisa whispered. Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, and it is important. I do not yet know why, but it is important." Across the hall, murmurs grew louder. Some aliens shook their heads in disbelief. "Has she lost her mind?" a small, insect-like diplomat muttered. "What madness is this?" Others were more curious. A group of tall, blue-skinned aliens with long arms leaned forward, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. "She does not speak lightly," one of them said. "Among her people, those words are not jokes, they carry weight." Daniel noticed Lady Sarava observing him again. Her eyes did not waver. She was still calm, but there was a new intensity in her gaze. It was as if she were measuring him, weighing his spirit, his courage, and his heart. Daniel did not look away. He had learned long ago that strength was not only in the body but in the mind and in the calmness of action. Suddenly, a voice rang out, sharp and angry. It was Verk, the green-scaled lord who had insulted her earlier. "This is preposterous. She cannot mean what she says. This human, this weak creature, cannot be considered anything other than insignificant. It is an insult to the dignity of this hall." Daniel stood slowly. He could feel every eye on him, some full of ridicule, some of fear, and some of something he could not name. He spoke again, his voice steady and calm. "You are mistaken," he said. "It is not a question of strength or pride. She speaks of respect and courage. I have done nothing extraordinary. I only acted with honesty and fairness. That is why she speaks as she does. That is why she has noticed me." The hall was silent again, heavier this time. Even Verk paused, his mouth opening and closing as if to say something, but no words came. A murmur ran through the audience. Aliens looked at each other, whispering about humans in a tone that Daniel could barely understand. Some looked fearful, others looked intrigued. Lisa leaned close to Daniel. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "I am. This is what humans do. We face challenges not always with strength but with honesty and courage. That is enough sometimes." Lady Sarava rose from her seat and moved toward the center of the platform. Her voice rang out, calm but commanding. "Enough whispers," she said. "This hall has come together to decide matters of trade and peace. Do not let petty insults or misunderstandings cloud judgment. Human or alien, each presence here matters. Let us continue the meeting with clarity." Her words carried authority. Even Verk stepped back slightly, though his scales still shimmered with irritation. The other aliens nodded, some reluctantly, and the meeting slowly resumed. Daniel sank back into his chair, feeling the tension ease just slightly. Yet he could feel her eyes on him throughout the rest of the session. As the meeting continued, Daniel noticed that some aliens were watching him differently. They leaned forward, paying attention to the words of a human, something they rarely did. One by one, they began to listen when he spoke, even though his voice was quiet and simple. His words were not filled with threats or commands. They were filled with observation, reasoning, and honesty. After several hours, the meeting adjourned. Delegates slowly left the chamber, some heading toward personal quarters, others gathering in small groups to discuss the events of the day. Daniel and Lisa stayed behind, giving themselves a moment of quiet. "He really did it," Lisa whispered. "You know, you actually impressed her. I have never seen her look at anyone like that." Daniel shook his head. "I do not seek to impress. I seek only to do what is right. That is all. If she notices, it is not because of me, but because she sees the truth." Lisa smiled faintly, though her hands still shook. "Truth is rare in this hall," she said softly. "Maybe that is why she reacted like that. She does not see many beings who act without pride or fear." Daniel walked toward the large windows that overlooked the endless stars outside the station. Ships passed quietly in the distance. He thought about the words Lady Sarava had spoken. To him, they were confusing, but there was no question they carried meaning far beyond what he had heard before. Something had shifted. Something had begun. Later, in the quiet corridors, Lady Sarava approached him. No one else was around, and for a moment it felt like the rest of the galaxy had disappeared. She stopped a few feet away, her purple eyes focused on him. "You speak differently than humans I have met," she said softly. Her voice was low but steady. "You do not speak to impress, nor do you speak to dominate. You speak from your heart. That is unusual." Daniel bowed slightly. "I speak only as I must. That is all. I do not seek praise, nor do I seek anger. I only speak truth." She studied him for a long moment. "You are unlike others of your kind. Perhaps that is why I said what I did in the hall. It was not thoughtless." Daniel's heart beat faster. I am honored, Lady Sarava. I only hope my actions are worthy of your words." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "We shall see, human. Actions speak louder than words. Courage, fairness, and honesty, they will show more than any phrase I could say." In the coming days, whispers about the event in the hall spread throughout the station. Aliens discussed it in every corner. What had Lady Sarava meant? Why had a human been noticed in such a way? Some laughed at the idea, others shook their heads in disbelief, and a few thought carefully, wondering if humans were more capable than they had assumed. Back in the human quarters, Daniel tried to rest, but his mind was busy. He replayed every moment of the meeting, every word, every glance. Something had changed, not just in Lady Sarava, but in the way the station now regarded humans. Even small gestures had begun to show that the smallest being could influence the largest power. Lisa came to check on him. "You look tired," she said. "Everyone is talking about what happened in the hall. Some of the diplomats are nervous now. They never expected a human to speak like that, and they never expected her to react like that." Daniel nodded. "I cannot change what others think. I can only act with honesty and courage. That is all a human can do. Everything else is not in our hands." Days passed, and Daniel continued to observe the strange ways of the station. He learned that the smallest gestures, the quiet words, and the careful actions mattered more than he had imagined. Aliens began to treat him with caution, respect, or curiosity. No one ignored him anymore. Lady Sarava often glanced his way during meetings, her expression unreadable, but Daniel could feel the weight of her attention. One evening, as the artificial sun of the station set, Daniel walked along the observation deck. The stars were bright, infinite, and cold. He thought about the hall, about Lady Sarava, and about the strange words she had spoken. "If only you were my husband, human." The phrase repeated in his mind, strange and beautiful. It carried meaning, but what that meaning was, he did not yet know. A sudden voice interrupted his thoughts. "It carries meaning more than you think," Lady Sarava said, stepping quietly beside him. He had not heard her approach. "Among my people, those words are not mere sentiment. They are trust, admiration, and recognition. You have earned all three, though perhaps not in ways you realize." Daniel turned to face her. I do not know what to say." "Then say nothing," she replied. "Your silence speaks enough." For a long moment they stood together, gazing at the endless galaxy. Daniel realized that this was not a beginning that could be measured by time or distance. This was a beginning measured by courage, by honesty, and by the quiet connection between two very different beings. And somewhere deep in the station, the whispers continued. The hall had not forgotten, nor had the galaxy. Daniel did not yet know what the future held, but he knew that the simple truth of his actions and the strange words of Lady Sarava had begun to change the way humans were seen among the stars. The days ahead promised challenges, danger, and new revelations. Yet in that quiet moment, Daniel felt the first spark of something remarkable, an understanding between human and alien, small and vast, simple and powerful. The day after the hall incident, the station felt different. The air was alive with whispers and speculation. Aliens moved through corridors in small groups, talking in low voices about what had happened. Every time Daniel or Lady Sarava passed through, conversations paused. Eyes followed them, sometimes with curiosity, sometimes with fear, and sometimes with admiration. Daniel tried to ignore the attention. He had no desire for praise or recognition. He had only spoken what was right and acted with honesty. Yet he could feel the shift in the way the station now regarded humans. Before, humans were a small, quiet delegation, often overlooked. Now there was a sense of caution in every gaze directed at him. Lisa Brown followed closely behind him as he walked through the observation deck. "I don't like this," she said softly. "People are staring too much. Even the aliens we worked with before are acting strange." Daniel shook his head. "This is not something to fear. This is the effect of truth. People notice it whether they like it or not. Let them talk. Let them watch. We cannot change their curiosity, only how we respond to it." Lisa nodded, though her frown remained. She had always been cautious, aware of how fragile humans could appear in alien spaces. Daniel, on the other hand, had learned that strength was quiet, and that sometimes silence and patience were more powerful than words or weapons. By mid-morning, the rumors had spread further. Some aliens told tales that exaggerated the incident. One rumor claimed that Lady Sarava had declared Daniel the human champion of the galaxy. Another said that she had insulted her own people by showing admiration for a human. The truth, of course, was far simpler. Lady Sarava had spoken a phrase that, among her people, held great weight. It expressed trust, respect, and recognition of courage. Daniel sat quietly in the human delegation's meeting room, listening to the rumors reported by Lisa. "Some of them think she wants to marry you," she said, exasperated. "Others think she's testing us. I don't understand how one sentence could cause so much trouble." Daniel smiled faintly. "It is not trouble, it is curiosity. We must remember that humans are unusual here. One human's words, one human's actions can be magnified. That is not our fault. That is the way the galaxy notices what is true." Lisa shook her head, but she smiled faintly. "You make it sound so simple, but it is not. People are talking, Daniel. Even the council members are discussing it. They are wondering if humans are more capable than they thought." Across the station, Lady Sarava held private meetings with her aides. She did not discuss Daniel openly, at least not directly. But her advisors could see her thoughts were occupied. She spoke less of trade and politics, more of strategy and observation. "We must watch the human," she said quietly. "There is something in him that does not belong to fear or pride. We cannot ignore it. He is unusual." Her aides looked at each other nervously. "Is this personal?" one asked. "Perhaps," Lady Sarava replied. "Perhaps it is not, but he is human and humans are unpredictable, and sometimes unpredictable beings are stronger than armies." Meanwhile, Daniel continued his quiet routine. He observed the station, recorded notes about alien cultures, and attended meetings with the human delegation. His calmness remained. He did not seek attention, and he avoided unnecessary conversation. But every time he passed Lady Sarava in a corridor or during meetings, he could feel her gaze. She did not look at him with pride or arrogance. She looked at him with curiosity, measuring him silently. One day, during a briefing about interstellar trade routes, Lady Sarava approached Daniel after the session. "You have a careful mind," she said softly. "Most humans I have met are loud or hasty. You are not. You listen. You observe. That is rare." Daniel nodded. "I have learned that strength is not always in noise or force. Sometimes it is in attention, patience, and understanding." Her eyes flickered with interest. "You speak like a philosopher or a strategist, perhaps both. That is unusual." As the days passed, other humans began to notice the changes as well. Lisa spoke quietly to Daniel in the mess hall. "People are acting differently around you. Aliens who once ignored us now nod politely. Some even pause when we pass. I think they are watching you more closely than Lady Sarava, and that's saying something." Daniel sipped his tea slowly. "Let them watch. Let them learn. It is not arrogance to be observed. It is only an opportunity to act rightly." The human delegation grew bolder. Small requests that had once been ignored were now considered. Other delegates began to ask Daniel for his opinion. They respected his quiet calm, his honesty, and the way he did not seek to dominate a discussion with pride or anger. Daniel always replied with simple words, careful observation, and a steady voice. One afternoon, a minor conflict erupted in the station. Two alien factions argued over the use of docking bays, and tempers flared. Shouts filled the corridors. Daniel stepped into the midst of the crowd, not to fight, but to mediate. His calm voice and clear reasoning helped both sides reach a compromise quickly. Those who witnessed it were amazed. He had not commanded with force, nor had he threatened. He had used only words, patience, and understanding. Lady Sarava watched from the observation balcony above. Her lips curved slightly in a rare smile. "That is why I spoke as I did," she said quietly. "This human has a mind and a heart unlike most beings I have met. His courage is quiet, but it is stronger than many armies." That evening, Daniel walked alone along the observation deck. The stars outside seemed endless, and the silence of space was soothing. Lady Sarava approached silently. He did not turn at first, but then he sensed her presence. "You do not seek recognition," she said, her voice soft. "And yet others cannot ignore you. That is rare among humans and aliens alike." Daniel looked at her. "I seek nothing but what is right. Recognition is not needed for that." She studied him, her expression unreadable. "Do you not feel lonely here, among so many beings who do not understand your ways?" Daniel considered this. "Perhaps, but I do not mind. Understanding will come in time. And patience is part of human strength." Lady Sarava nodded slowly. "You speak well, and yet there is more than strength in your words. There is honesty, and honesty is dangerous in this galaxy. Many cannot accept it." Daniel smiled faintly. "Honesty is not dangerous if it is used wisely, but even if it is, I would not choose otherwise. To act against truth is a choice humans do not make lightly." The next few days brought more attention. Rumors about Daniel and Lady Sarava continued to spread. Some aliens speculated about the phrase she had spoken in the hall. Others tried to dismiss it as a simple gesture of politeness. But those who understood Kralian culture knew that it was more than that. It was a statement of trust, admiration, and recognition. And Daniel had earned it through simple, honest actions. Even the station's leadership began to notice. Delegates who had once ignored the human delegation now paused to speak to Daniel, asking his opinion on minor matters. He answered simply and calmly, never boasting, never arguing. His words carried clarity, and clarity was rare in a hall filled with prideful and boastful beings. Lady Sarava continued to watch him. She rarely spoke of him openly to others, but her eyes followed his every movement. Something about his quiet courage, his patience, and his honesty fascinated her. She began to think about him in ways she had never thought about another being. One evening, she invited Daniel to her private observation chamber. "I wish to understand you better," she said softly. Not as a diplomat, not as a human, but as a being of thought and action. You have intrigued me since the day we met in the hall. Daniel bowed slightly. I am honored, Lady Sarava. I do not know if I can explain myself fully, but I will speak honestly. They spent hours talking quietly about duty, courage, the nature of honesty, and the challenges of being human in a galaxy that often valued pride and power above all else. Daniel spoke simply, clearly, and with thoughtfulness. Lady Sarava listened, fascinated by the depth and quiet strength of a species she had barely known. By the end of the night, both of them felt a change. Something had shifted. Their understanding of each other had grown, and along with it, a respect and curiosity that could not be ignored. The station outside seemed quieter now, almost aware that a small, human presence had begun to alter the way the galaxy thought about strength, courage, and honor. Daniel returned to his quarters later, tired but not anxious. He realized that this was the beginning of something far larger than a single hall meeting. The ripple of one phrase, one act of honesty, and one moment of courage had begun to spread. Aliens and humans alike would take notice. And somewhere inside, he felt a spark of hope, a spark that perhaps humans, small and quiet as they seemed, could leave a mark on the galaxy far beyond what anyone expected. And Lady Sarava, watching from her chamber, understood that her words in the hall were not a mistake. They had started something, a bond, a curiosity, a recognition of courage that neither human nor alien could ignore. The galaxy was vast, the dangers many, and the challenges endless. But in that moment, one human had proven that simple courage, honesty, and patience could be more powerful than armies, more persuasive than words of pride, and more respected than the strongest weapons. And that was only the beginning. The station had been quiet for a few days, but the calm was only an illusion. Far outside in the uncharted reaches of space, a small fleet of pirates drifted silently. They were fast, heavily armed, and ruthless. Their sensors had picked up the neutral station, full of diplomats, civilians, and resources. The pirates did not care for treaties or negotiations. To them, it was a prize waiting to be taken. Inside the station, life continued as usual. Delegates held meetings, traders discussed contracts, and humans continued their quiet routines. Daniel Morris walked along the observation deck, looking at the stars. Lady Sarava joined him without announcement, as she often did now. "You are calm," she said, her voice soft. "Even though the station is crowded, chaotic, and full of potential danger, you seem unshaken." Daniel shrugged lightly. "Calm is a choice. Panic does not solve problems. Only clear thought and steady action do." Her eyes studied him. "That is unusual. Most beings react first with fear, then with pride. You do not." "I have learned that courage is not absence of fear," Daniel said simply. "It is the choice to act despite fear." Lady Sarava's lips curved slightly. She had heard many speeches from many beings, but none were as simple and honest as Daniel's. "Perhaps that is why I noticed you in the hall," she said quietly. "You do not act for praise or recognition. You act because it is right. That is rare." Their quiet conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. Red lights flashed across the station. A deep voice echoed over the public speakers. "Warning! Warning! Unauthorized fleet detected approaching the station. All personnel prepare for emergency protocols." Daniel's heart did not race, but his mind sharpened. He turned quickly to Lady Sarava. "The pirates are here," he said. "They will strike the station. We must help protect it and its people." Lady Sarava nodded. "Then we act. I will follow your lead, human." Daniel did not expect such words. To have the noblewoman trust him in a moment of danger was remarkable, yet he did not hesitate. "We must gather the civilians first," he said. "Then we protect strategic points. We cannot stop the ships with force alone, but we can save lives." The corridors filled with panicked beings. Aliens shouted orders in dozens of languages. Humans moved quickly to organize safe zones. Daniel took charge calmly, directing humans and small alien groups alike. His voice was firm but not loud. He moved with precision, guiding people to safety. In one corridor, a group of young aliens froze in fear. Daniel approached them slowly, kneeling to meet their eyes. "You are safe," he said quietly. "Follow me and you will reach safety. I will not leave anyone behind." The children hesitated, but his calmness reassured them. One by one, they followed him through twisting hallways, away from the danger above. Meanwhile, Lady Sarava was on the platform, coordinating security drones and guards. Her voice was clear and strong, but she did not micromanage. She trusted Daniel, and that trust allowed him to act without hesitation. When she saw him leading groups of beings to safety, her respect deepened. A sudden explosion shook the station. One of the pirate ships had fired at a docking bay, tearing through the metal walls. Smoke filled the air, alarms blared, and beings screamed in panic. Daniel ran toward the scene. His training allowed him to move through smoke-filled corridors without hesitation. He found a group of trapped workers, alien and human alike. "Follow me," he shouted, grabbing a sturdy metal beam to help clear the debris. He worked quickly, lifting and moving obstacles. The workers hesitated at first, unsure of his strength, but his calm determination inspired them. One by one, they made it out safely. Lady Sarava appeared at the end of the corridor. Her eyes glimmered with something Daniel could not name: admiration, concern, respect. She did not speak, but her presence reminded the group to move quickly. Daniel noticed the subtle nod she gave him, almost imperceptible, yet full of meaning. The pirates struck again, this time aiming for the central communication hub. Daniel realized the importance of protecting it. If it fell, the station would be cut off from any help. He ran through the halls, his mind calculating the safest and fastest route. At the hub, he found a small team struggling to operate damaged controls. "Step aside," he said calmly. "I will help." With steady hands, he repaired circuits, rerouted power, and restored communication lines. The team watched in awe as the human moved efficiently, solving problems that could have taken hours. Within minutes, emergency messages were sent to nearby Allied ships. Reinforcements were on their way. Lady Sarava arrived shortly after, overseeing the work. "You are remarkable, human," she said quietly. "You do not hesitate, you do not falter. You act with courage and intelligence at the same time. That is unusual." Daniel shook his head. "It is only what must be done. No one here should be left behind. That is the choice we make when we act rightly." The pirates' attack continued for hours. Daniel and Lady Sarava moved together through corridors, coordinating evacuations, protecting civilians, and countering small skirmishes. They became a team. She gave orders to security forces while trusting Daniel to handle the people. He moved with confidence, not arrogance, and his calmness spread to those around him. In one moment, a young alien child screamed from a side corridor. A small fire blocked the way. Daniel ran forward without hesitation. Lady Sarava followed closely. He lifted the child and guided her through a safe passage he had noted moments before. "You are safe now," he said gently. The child's eyes shone with relief, and she clung to him tightly. By the time the pirates finally retreated, the station was damaged but intact. Fires were extinguished and injured beings were cared for. Daniel collapsed into a chair for a moment, exhausted but satisfied. Around him, the humans and aliens he had protected were safe. His actions had saved countless lives. Lady Sarava stood beside him, her expression unreadable, yet her eyes reflected deep respect. "You have done what few beings could," she said softly. "You led, you protected, and you acted with courage and wisdom. I admire that." Daniel looked at her quietly. "I did only what was right, that is all." "Perhaps," she said, "but what is right is not always easy. You made it look simple, but it was not. That is why I respect you. That is why I spoke as I did in the hall." Daniel's heart stirred at the memory of her words. If only you were my husband, human. He understood now that she had seen his character then, even before the crisis. Her trust in him had been earned through truth and courage, not through status or power. As the station repaired itself, the humans and aliens began to see a new reality. Humans were not weak. They were clever, brave, and capable of extraordinary acts. Daniel had shown them this in the harshest of circumstances. His quiet strength had left an impression that could not be ignored. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Daniel and Lady Sarava stood together. The stars outside were bright and infinite, but inside there was a quiet understanding. "You acted without hesitation," she said softly. "Most beings would have panicked. Others would have fought for pride or revenge. You did what was right." Daniel nodded. "It is the only choice a human can make. Courage is not in fighting alone. It is in protecting life, in facing danger, and in acting with honesty." Her eyes softened slightly. "You are different from any being I have ever met. Perhaps that is why I spoke as I did. Perhaps that is why I will remember this day always." Daniel did not know what the future held. He knew the galaxy was dangerous, filled with unpredictable threats. But he had discovered something in himself that he had not known before, the strength to act when it mattered, and the knowledge that honesty and courage could change the way the universe saw humans. Lady Sarava stayed by his side, silent but present. Her trust had grown, her admiration was clear, and the bond between human and alien deepened in ways neither fully understood. The station, once quiet and ordinary, had become a place where humans were no longer overlooked. One human, through calmness, courage, and truth, had proven that even the smallest beings could shape events far larger than themselves. And Daniel knew, quietly, that this was only the beginning.